Hello, friends. Hello. It's Raquel from Our Infinite Nature here with your energy forecast for the upcoming Aries New Moon with total solar eclipse on April 8th. And you might notice I'm coming to you from a different location today. I am actually on the beautiful island of Oahu, visiting my best friend with my family. Really happy to bring you some of the energies coming up with next week's new moon in Aries. Okay, so first of all, if you're feeling a bit more focused on your actions and your values, how your actions actually align with your values, but you're looking at all of this from a longer term, kind of longer game perspective, if you're more focused on your long vision than your kind of short here and now vision, congratulations, you are totally feeling the energies of this upcoming new moon in Aries. So on April 8th, we have a new moon in Aries, and we also have a total solar eclipse as well. And this total solar eclipse will be viewable from portions of North America, the path of totality, which means the areas where the sun will actually be fully eclipsed by the moon actually takes this kind of wide arc through parts of Mexico, parts of the United States, up into parts of Canada. For all of us in North America, we will get what's more of a partial solar eclipse. So we won't see the total eclipse. We'll get more of a partial solar eclipse, but everyone, regardless of whether you're in North America or not, regardless of whether you're in the path of the actual total eclipse of the sun or not, everyone will be feeling some of the rippling energies that are coming from this solar eclipse. So what are some of these energies? Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about Aries itself, Aries energy, because this eclipse that's happening in Aries is also the north node of the moon right now. So as I mentioned in previous videos, the eclipses that we're currently having, along with the eclipses we've had back starting last spring, last fall, and including the ones that are coming up next fall, are all in this kind of are all in this Aries Libra axis, where we have Aries as the north node and Libra as the south node. And with Aries in the north node, it's kind of a way for us to focus on what we're moving toward. We are trying to bring ourselves toward the light side of Aries, toward this energy of self-actualization, self-individualization, the Aries energy of action. So let's talk a little bit about Aries, shall we? So Aries energy is the first sign of the zodiac, the cardinal fire sign. Aries energy is the fire starter. It's the energy that gets things going. And as such, Aries energy is extremely passionate, is extremely independent, initiatory. Like Aries likes to get things going, likes to be the person who starts things, often very problem solving, very go-getting. Now, on the shadow side of Aries energy, we have some impulsivity. We also have a lack of patience, so a lot of impatience, and we have a tendency toward burnout that can often happen within that Aries energy as well. Now, when we're talking a little bit about that lack of patience, that also gives Aries a little bit of this challenge and seeing the longer game and really holding on to that longer vision. And this is important because what I've been feeling intuitively is that's actually a really big theme for this particular lunation, this particular new moon, especially with the eclipse as part of it. So with this Aries energy, being that Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, Aries doesn't always have the emotional depth and breadth of experience to really feel into and envision the longer plan, the longer game, or even take kind of that higher vision. And yet that's exactly what we're being tasked, what we're being asked to do with this new moon in Aries. So let's talk a little bit about the eclipse, because a lot of people are excited about this eclipse. It is exciting. It's one of the first total eclipses we've had here in North America for a while. And I think this is actually I don't think we're going to have another full total eclipse in North America until 2044. So that's really exciting for even people who are traveling to this path of totality in order to see this particular eclipse of the sun. And I was reading up on it, and I read that also the actual portion of time when the sun is going to be fully eclipsed by the moon is going to last like 4.5 minutes. That's a really long time. Now, for those who are in the path of totality, that means when the sun is actually fully eclipsed by the moon, they can actually remove the protective glasses. Because remember, friends, we are never, ever, ever supposed to look at a solar eclipse. Okay. You're going to damage your eyes. But when the sun is actually fully eclipsed by the moon, which only happens when it's a total solar eclipse and only happens for those who are in the path of totality, they can actually remove their glasses and look up at the sun and see it fully eclipsed by the moon. And from what I've heard from other people's experiences, they can actually even see some of the planets that are around as the day kind of turns into night. Now, for the rest of us who are not in the path of totality, if you're going to be out there looking at the eclipse, wear protective eye gear, please. The rest of us will not be experiencing a total solar eclipse. And so we must wear protective eye gear. And for those who are in the path of totality, please wear your protective eye gear until the actual moments when the sun is eclipsed. That's the only time you can take those glasses off. Otherwise, do not look at the sun. Okay, like safety first, friend, safety first. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the eclipse. When I was feeling intuitively into the message and the energy of this particular solar eclipse, I was met with this message around long-term versus short-term goals and visions, and especially around idealism or perfectionism and how it plays out in our short-term versus long-term visions. And the message that my guides gave me was that idealism, when used for short-term goals and for short-term visions, is a total distraction. Yet, idealism used for longer-term visions, that is a strength and a tactic for expansion. So, okay, what's the difference between idealism short term versus idealism long term? That's definitely what I was first like pondering when I got this intuitive hit from my guides. And what they shared with me is that when we utilize this idea of idealism for very short term, here and now, it has to happen, we end up really falling prey to a lot of black and white, good versus bad, us versus them, needs to happen now type of thinking, even a level of like moral supremacy when we're using idealism for short term, for the here and now. We can get to a place with this idealism, even kind of perfectionism that comes through it, as a way to make ourselves feel better than or worse than other people, right? Which is not really the best use of an energy like idealism. Whereas when we're using the energy of idealism, of an ideal vision of what's going to happen for more of our longer game, longer term view and planning and visions, we're creating an energy of possibility, of hope, of collaboration, of progress. So what's a good example of, short-term idealism as distraction versus long-term idealism as a strength? Well, I'm going to use the environmental movement and sustainability movement as an example of this. When we're using idealism or the idea of, hey, we can live on a planet without doing so much damage to it, we can live more sustainably on this planet. When we're taking that form of idealism and making it really short term, it can lead into a lot of, you have to recycle. You have to get off fossil fuels. You cannot drive a car. You have to ride a bike or public transportation. It can move into a lot of, this change needs to happen now, and everyone needs to make these changes. It can be very forceful. It can be very black and white. It can be very shame and blame inducing. Whereas when we're utilizing this vision, this idealistic vision of what's possible for a more sustainable world for the long term, we're not focusing on everyone being perfectly sustainable, everyone reducing their carbon footprints, everyone doing it perfectly, ideally. Instead, we're saying, hey, if everyone does something for Earth, even imperfectly, if we all take actions for Earth, no matter how big or small, that's going to make a long difference. That's going to make a big difference long term. And when we're thinking about environmentalism long term as well, we're really looking at people already out there, corporations, businesses, even some government, even some some government organizations out there that are already looking to long-term visions planning for how to, first of all, adapt to the changes that are already coming our way with climate change, but also how can we change the way that we're living so that we're living in a more sustainable way, knowing that the changes that are going to happen are not going to just happen overnight. They're going to take time and patience and rollouts of different things. So I think that's a really good example of short-term idealism as a distraction versus long-term idealism as a strength. Another place we can really see this playing out is in politics. And I don't want to get super political here, but the personal is political, and we are in an election year. And right now, we can really see, especially when we are in a big election cycle like we are here in the United States right now, we can see how propaganda is utilized to kind of play on people's ideals and kind of manipulate them to believe one way or another for votes, right? So we can be emotionally manipulated through our idealism in the short term. And when I think about politics and I think about like single issue voters, for example, people who decide that there's this one issue, and because of this one issue, they are either not going to vote or they're going to kind of vote against their better interests or the better interests for all. That to me is a really clear example of idealism in the short term being a distraction, because they're willing to give up decades of progress that has happened over periods of time of people working really hard. They're willing to completely give that up for this one issue because it's so ideal, like black or white for them. So that's another example of that. So intuitively, there was this big energy around this particular eclipse for like, how are our actions and our values, how are they aligning with our long-term vision, whether it's our long-term vision for ourselves and our own lives, or the long-term vision we hold for the world itself? Are the actions we're taking now not only aligned with our values, but are they aligned with the world that we're envisioning, the long game here? So this is a big theme for this Aries new moon and this total solar eclipse. Now, here's the thing about eclipses. They're not always the most clarifying, in that they're not the best times to literally go out and seek and really try and gain clarity. Now, that being said, a lot of clarity does come in during eclipse seasons when we give ourselves the space and time to just reflect on what is happening, just to be still, observe, take notice. That's often when these epiphanies, I call them eclipse epiphanies, they kind of just like bubble into our awareness. They either come from within or sometimes it feels like they drop in, but we all of a sudden get these moments of like, aha, I understand that now, or it all makes sense, or this is why I'm acting this way, or this is what I'm actually really wanting here. Like these moments do happen during eclipse seasons when we're not forcing the clarity, when we're just open to receive it. So what I believe we're being tasked to do with this Aries new moon, because Aries new moon is pretty inspiring for us action wise. Aries itself is a very action oriented energy. Aries being the first sign of the zodiac is like, let's go, let's do this thing, let's start something new. And so often around an Aries new moon, we are really inspired to begin again, to rebirth something within ourselves, to start a new project, to start fresh. There's a lot of that. But with the eclipse energy at play with this particular Aries new moon, that kind of like, let's go, let's do this thing is a little bit tempered. And so the energies I'm really picking up on are, hey, where am I feeling inclined to act right now? Like, where am I really feeling myself drawn to and pulled toward in terms of my actions? What do I feel within me that wants to be created, that wants to be started? These are great kind of awarenesses to sit in with this new moon. But in particular, there's the sense of just kind of being aware of our short term versus our long term actions, values, and visions. And I believe that this particular solar eclipse is helping us to lengthen our visions, to move our visions from the short term, which is kind of more Ariesy, into the long term, which is possible with that Aries energy if we allow that fiery Aries energy to sustain what we're trying to create. So if you want more about this particular eclipse and Aries new moon, if you would like to learn a little bit more about the astrology of this moon, if you're looking for some journal prompts or some kind of questioning prompts to help you be in reflection for this particular interstellar event, please check out my Moonblog. I will link it below. I also wanted to share with you all that the day after this new moon in Aries, my new book, Self-Care for Eco-Anxiety, launches. And it's really funny because my last book, Everyday Plant Magic, also launched on the day after a new moon eclipse. And here again, my book, Self-Care Eco-Anxiety, is launching after a new moon eclipse. And I don't choose my publishing dates, friends. That's completely my publishing house. And they don't follow astrology. So for me, this is La Luna, Mother Moon herself, working in my favor. I always say, you probably have heard me say this before, friends, and I will say it many times again. When you start working with moon energy, when you start working with the moon works with you. And this is another beautiful example of that. I am a moon messenger. I share about every new moon and full moon. And here we have the moon, you know, really being a support for me by providing this really beautiful portal of a new moon eclipse to help me launch my next book. If you want to learn more about my book, please follow me at Our Infinite Nature Raquel. I will be sharing more about the book here as well. And if you would like to join me for a free book launch event, I will link that below. That will be occurring on Thursday, April 11th. It'll be here on Zoom, totally free, and we'll be meeting from about 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. I will be reading a bit from the book, sharing about my story of eco-anxiety and how I moved through that challenge, how I help others do it with this book. I'll be demonstrating some of the self-care practices and also be doing some giveaways and other fun things. So if you want to join us, follow the link below. And if you want more on working with the energies of this new moon, total solar eclipse in Aries, please check it all out at the blog. All of it is linked below. Thank you all so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, share, and follow if you love this content. And I will see you again in a few weeks for our next full moon. Bye, friends.